Hi, welcome to Rock and Metal Invasion. My name is Steve. Coming up on the show today, I'm doing the Hair Metal Hall of Fame. And who better to help me do this than Trevor from the Krash Kourse Metal Show. How you going, Trevor?
What's up, Steve? How you doing, bro? Thank you again for having me on. This is gonna be awesome.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Of course, there's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but there is no, from what I understand, maybe there is one that I don't know about, but there is no Hair Metal Hall of Fame. So, I think people are getting a little bit more comfortable with that term, and I think people might be a little bit more accepting about being in that type of Hall of Fame. So, it's a little bit
Mhm.
like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as far as criteria, but it's really up to Trevor and up to me as to who we decide should be in this Hall of Fame. And obviously, there'd be heaps of bands that could potentially be in it, but just for starters, today we've each selected five. So, do you want to kick us off with your first band that's going to make the Hair Metal Hall of Fame?
So yeah, definitely, and we're there's not gonna be any like rat bands, Steve, or anything like that, like what the actual Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducts into their Hall of Fame,
Yeah,
which is
sure, yeah,
absolutely crazy.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
so we're gonna keep it all rock and roll and metal over in this
yeah.
side. But yes, hair metal for me as well. So first one though, since so like we were talking a little bit before we started here, like since I didn't like live through the 80s, I look back on like a lot of the bands kind of like in a level playing field. Like there wasn't really because like I was a teenager in like 2004, 2005, 2006. So like I was like there wasn't a MTV or a radio that was telling me, "Hey, Guns N' Roses is the best, Motley Crue is the best, and there will never be a band better than them," like that kind of thing. So, but that was all what I heard though, and I was like, I gotta go find my own stuff. So that's why I kind of like look at everything. So I might not have the common Hall of Fame, nominees that you would think, but so I'm going to throw everyone for a loop. Since I am a little younger, I'm going to throw a band, or actually a couple bands that can get lumped in it here for the second wave of sleaze metal that came out from Europe and Sweden in like 2000 to 2005 was like the biggest. Like names like Dirty Penny, uh,
Mm,
Crash Diet, Vein Jenna. So I don't have a Crash Diet. Like I was originally going to do Crash Diet as my nominee, but I don't have anything physical and can't really talk too specifically like I can Vein Jenna. But they're both from Sweden. They're
mm,
both around that same 2005 time. Like Crash Diet even formed in 1999. They got
mm,
signed by Universal, like an offshoot of Universal company, which at the time like was still a big like record label and just company in general. And just to have like a band look like this,
yeah.
like and I'm sure like if you look up Crash Diet, like Dave Lepper was the lead singer, and like he eventually overdosed after their first album was released in
Mm,
2005. But his impact was super huge for
mm,
like my generation.
mm,
Uh, and for context, I'm 32 years old now. So like in 2005, like that was big for people over in Europe, and maybe not so much America, but like kids like me that were into this kind of thing were like, who the like I didn't know like is this still even alive? Like this kind of
mm,
stuff because I was always looking for
mm.
80s, early 90s
Yeah,
stuff. And I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh my God, there's other kids like or like young
yeah,
adults like
yeah.
me that are still doing this. So like, and at the time, obviously it wasn't cool. You weren't gonna get rich anymore doing this
Mm,
kind of subgenre. And I think I gotta give props to Vangina, Crash Diet, even Dirty Penny over here in America. Dirty Penny was the American version of Crash Diet and Vangina, and they all released their debut albums within like a year or two of each other. So
mm,
now the second wave of sleaze metal in the Renaissance, as I like to call it, during like the 2005s to like 2010s, it didn't last that long. But man,
mm,
there is some really, really good stuff that I would hold up to anything from the golden age. And,
mm,
rightfully so. The 80s were the best. I'm not
yeah.
going to argue anybody or debate that. But there was still very classic, very awesome stuff that came out in the same vein as, what we all love, the gods of the golden era. So
Totally.
that's going to be my first choice there, Steve.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah, and I like what you're saying there in the sense that it wasn't cool when they did that. So they had to be kind of brave. They had to just go with, hey, this is what we like. We're going to put it out there. And maybe no one's going to care, but this is what we love. And then you're right. It actually caught on. And it's been a long process for
Mhm.
this type of music to be accepted again. And it's bands like Veins of Jenna who actually made people realize this is good music. This doesn't have to be like forgotten about. It doesn't have to just be a relic from the past. It can actually, you can put out a new album now. You can start a new band with that sound now and be successful. You know, because they had a bit of success, eh?
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing, like too, like and like you said with the term hair metal, like yeah, some people do have like an issue with that term, but it's like it's here to stay. Like you're
Mhm.
just not going to change it. Like I didn't invent it, but that's the term I always knew ever since I was like 12, 13 years old. So like, and it is kind of like an easy way to put all of these bands that are very similar
Mm.
in the same umbrella. Because like in my world, I think of it like here's the hair metal umbrella. Then you
Mm.
put down sleaze metal, glam,
Sure.
AOR even,
Yeah.
like, and there's like a lot of different offshoots through in hair metal. But when you're talking about a sleaze metal band or an AOR band, there's somewhat gonna sound the same. Now, obviously, yes, there are differences, but
Mm.
like generally speaking, you're not gonna get them confused with a black metal band,
Mm.
So
Yeah, exactly.
that
Yeah.
kind of my definition with this.
Yeah, 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 and I mean that's a whole separate show in itself, right? Like, what is hair metal, isn't it? So that's not,
Right.
we won't go down that rabbit hole, but absolutely, yeah. And I mean, but it is important too because if we're going to have a hair metal Hall of Fame, right, you got to sort of decide, well, what qualifies, right? Yeah, so Slayer's not going to make it, obviously, right? So,
Right.
my first choice is an interesting one, really, because in a way, my definition of hair metal is sort of those bands that came out around that 83 to sort of 92 kind of period. I'm not saying you couldn't be hair metal after that, like some of the bands you talked about, but they were sort of the initial hair metal bands. But this band actually, their debut album came out in '81. But I'm kind of calling them like the godfathers of hair metal. They are big influences on everyone who came after them, and they were consistently changing their style, their look, and their sound. And then other bands were following, so they were real leaders, at least in the '80s. So yeah, I'm going to go with Motley Crue as my first sort of nomination, induction into the hair metal Hall of Fame. I mean, everyone knows about Motley Crue, right? Hit albums all throughout the '80s. Like I said, different sounds, different looks. So they had the glam look, they had the leathers look, they had the apocalyptic kind of look. They had and then other bands would sort of see that sound or that look, and then they'd be out there, with their album and that style, a few weeks later, sort of thing. So they were really influential. So and Nikki Sixx, good songwriter. They could write some good good hooks. Yeah, and I'm a big fan of the '80s Motley Crue. Whether they actually want to be accepted into the Hair Metal Hall of Fame, I don't know if they would. That was certainly part of my thinking when I was coming up with these bands. I want to select a band that's going to be like, nah, I don't want to be in it, which is why I'm not choosing Bon Jovi, right? I mean,
Right,
arguably,
right.
and I'm sure you're not upset about that, but they were huge in the '80s, but like they don't even want to know anything about hair metal,
Right.
or they just pretend they were never even part of that scene, even though they toured with Rat and all those types of bands. So, but I'm thinking Motley Crue, they might be okay with it. I think they've definitely got to take some credit, at least for the bands that they influenced and some of the other bands who are going to be also in the Hall of Fame. So, yeah, there we go. So that's my first one, Motley Crue.
Yeah, I mean I'm cool with that. I mean, not I mean because like I just don't visit Molly Crew that much anymore as I get older, but I mean they are important. Like you said, it was early. A lot of bands did take influence from them, from their look, from the sound. They
Yeah,
even had a couple different like eras within the 80s as well with their look. You had the Theater of Pain look, which was like
right.
totally glam. And then
Totally.
like you said, Shout the Devil was kind of like a demonic glam look,
Yeah,
So and then even at the end of the decade when they were doing like Dr. Feelgood and like Primal Scream, like around that era, early
yeah,
90s, they even
yeah.
had a little bit of a stripped down sleaze look,
That's
if you
right.
will.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean I can't debate on not voting for Motley Crue to be on this list.
Yeah.
So I'm with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Cool. All right. What's the next one?
All right, let's see. Let's go with this one. This one will be kind of fun to talk about, I think. And that is going to be Nitro, the band. And now, because this is like one of the first ones I talked to you about, Steve, I was like, I think this was my first choice. I'm like, Nitro has to be in here, just because, just if we're talking about Hall of Fame, same with like sports, a sports Hall of Fame. you pick the best players, like the best, like that are just freaks athletically, and that put up great stats and stuff like that. Now, Nitro didn't sell a million albums. Like, I'll give you that. They didn't sell well, and this album, like, you either love it or you hate it. You know, a lot of people don't like it, but a lot of people love it. And I mean, I fall in the category of really liking it / loving it just because of like the guitar work. Like Michelangelo is like one of the best guitar players. Speed, like metal guitar players.
Yeah.
And then you have Jim Gillette, like that can just sing higher than anyone and go low like anyone, like no one's business as well. Like just breaking glass, like crazy shit. And it's just I don't know. And then you also had like Bobby Rock, which he ends up being in Nelson and Vinnie Vincent as well. And like it's like he was like in a lot of great bands as well. So like you have kind of a little bit of a super group here, if you will. But man, like I don't know, when you listen to this album, you're like, what the hell am I listening to? This is literally How Fucking Rageous, the name of the album. And so I think like the main reason why like it might make a top 50 hair metal album for me, but I think just based on the sheer like craziness and like talent on the band, there's not many other bands that you can compare them to just like on the sheer talent that they show on this album. So now when you're talking about the second album, Hot Dripping Wet with Sweat is like, yeah, they took a step back. It's not nearly as crazy or as good. But that is the album that I would recommend you to listen to if you're not aware of Nitro and be like, holy shit. Like I said, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And hopefully you love it because like they are one of my nominations for the hair metal. Just basically, like you said, the look and just the sheer talent and sound, in my opinion.
No, it's cool. I mean, look, at first when you said that, I was like, what? What? Nitro? But then I was thinking about it. It's like, they're actually the poster boys for hair metal. Like if and if there's people writing an article about hair metal, it'll be a picture of Nitro quite possibly. And it's like, then they, like you say, they weren't the biggest band, but when people think of what's a good band to sort of show as an image of hair metal, and it's like, it's like if you looked up hair metal in the dictionary, it would be a picture of Nitro sort of thing, So yeah, it's they totally, and I think they totally embrace it too. They're like, yes, proudly hair metal, and so and yeah, musicianship as well. Was really good, whether you like the music or not. These guys could play. So yeah, no, I think that's a totally acceptable choice. So my second one kind of leads a little bit like that as well, except that it's a more popular band. So again, talk about poster boys for hair metal. I think Poison would be one of those as well. Like they'd have no issues if maybe back in the day they didn't want to be called hair metal, but I think now as we've talked about, it's become a lot more acceptable, and they'd be like, yeah, we are one of the top hair metal bands that ever existed really, and that. Yeah, when they went out with Motley Crue, they performed really well. They've still got a good fan base. This album here, like here in New Zealand, this was a big album. And I'm basing some of my selections a little bit on that. Like if I just walked down the street here in New Zealand, right, and asked random people, "Do you know Poison?" That most people would go, "Yeah, I know Poison." Motley Crue? Yeah, I know Motley Crue. So they've got that name recognition. People, so they're in the mainstream, but also they fit the category of hair metal. So lots of hits. Obviously they found the 90s really hard, like a lot of these bands did. And understandably, they're not really bothering to put out new material now, but they can tour. And, Brett Michaels, of course, has done the reality TV shows and all that sort of stuff as well. So he's a bit of a celebrity in that way. But yeah, I think for me, you got to have them in the Hall of Fame. So
yeah, I agree. Like Poison, ever since I was like born, like Poison, Cinderella, and Britney Fox were the bands that were in the family car, like that I always listen to. So they're always going to be near and dear to my heart. So like I'm with you on that. Like I'm cool with Poison being there, and specifically Open Up and Say like that album I think does get better over time. Same with like Native Tongue, but for different reasons. But like Open Up and Say like if you just like kind of get rid of the singles, because like you don't need to hear the singles all the time because they always get overplayed. But like, man, even the deep tracks, like that, like CeCe's tone on that album is so good, and it's like it's such like hair metal tone as well.
Mm.
And it's like a perfect album, like easily digestible for a normie to be like, yes, this is like glam hair metal here. This is the
Yeah.
tone. This is like
Getting
the type
started
of
on heavy
songs.
metal, take a listen to this. It's not too heavy or anything like that. It's got some pop hooks and all that kind of stuff, but it's hair
Yep.
metal. And that's why they had success, right? Because I think their first album, like you talked about CC's tone, I don't think he quite had it down on that first one, but on this one, the riffs are really good, and yeah, nothing but a good time. Which is like the first single was a hit. That's a kick-ass song.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that
I mean, and it still gets people moving. Like even
yeah,
if you are sick of the song, like
yeah, yeah,
when it comes on randomly, you're like, this is good. Like this is just a good song.
yeah.
So, but
Ultimate
like,
metal anthem. Yeah.
yeah. So like you said that people still know like who Poison are over in the Shire, like New Zealand and such. Like do they still play them on the radio, or like how do people still know of them? Like
Mainly because of every rose has its thorn. That song would probably still get
okay.
played. I don't, to be honest, listen to radio very much these days, but I would imagine it's still getting lots of airplay. So yeah.
Okay, that's cool that people still know. Like you go down and talk to some random person and
Oh
be like,
yeah,
"Yeah, I kind of know who Motley Crue is," or because over
yeah.
here in America, that probably is not that isn't going to happen.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, it's very. I would say less than 50-50 chance, way less than 50-50 chance. My
Yeah.
my in my neck of the woods
It
anyway.
probably depends who you ask too, right? Like younger people perhaps not, but yeah,
Right. Yeah. Yep. All right. So, my third one, correct? All
yeah,
right. Let's go with a more popular one. Since I kind of gave us two niche ones, if you will, I will give us Dokken.
mm,
So Dokken, I mean, if they would have stayed around a little bit longer, one more album in particular, if they would have stayed and put out an album in like 1989, 1990, 1991, they probably would have been on like the stadium tour with like Motley
yeah,
Crue and Poison. They probably would have took Poison's spot, maybe, or uh, not Def Leppard, because Def Leppard obviously is one of the
mm,
biggest bands in the world, but like they were that close, in my opinion, like Dokken. Now, a lot of people do point to like Underlock and Key as probably their best album, but I would venture and say this is where like everyone was firing on all cylinders. Like George
mm,
Lynch's tone on this album is absolutely amazing. Same thing like what we said about CC.
yeah,
Like no other album other than like Lynch Mob's Wicked Sensation, I think that is George Lynch doesn't have a better
yeah,
tone than this album and
yeah.
Wicked Sensation. And then even after this album, obviously Lynch goes to do Lynch Mob, and then Don does Don Dokken Up from the Ashes, which is a really good album in its own right as well. So you had two damn good albums that come out just out of the split of Dokken because they just can't stand each other, basically. And I think if they would have just stayed around for one more album at least, I think they would have been able to hit it big and been a very like solidified Hall of Famer, hair metal Hall of Famer. But I mean, just look at their catalog. You got hooks, you got everything. You got the tone. Uh, just Don's just a great songwriter as well. Great singer too. Like everyone in the band does their own thing, and it's just absolutely awesome. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can find someone that says, "Oh, there's this Dawkins song that gets played all the time, but it's just absolutely horrible." From the original era, not like the newer stuff from the 90s or 2000s or anything, but like the original run stuff. Like, I don't know if you can find someone that says this just ain't no good,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah, totally. Their body of
So
work.
yeah,
Is,
that's kind of what that's my third nomination is Dawkins.
yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, like the stuff they put out in the '80s, just yeah, every album fantastic. I mean, their first one maybe not so great, but yeah,
Yeah,
Under Lock
but
and Key.
still good though. Like still
Oh,
like
absolutely.
a lot of bands would kill to have one of like Tooth and Nail or the date Breaking the Change, or something like that. Like they would kill to have that kind of album.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And of course, we're calling it hair metal, and sometimes I felt like the problem with the term hair metal is some of the bands aren't that metal, but Dokken, that's metal. For me, that's '80s
Yeah.
metal. It's like especially having George there on guitar because he's got some heavy riffs. So
Mm.
And it mixes really nicely with Don's melodic vocals. It's just that really perfect mix of some good heavy guitars and then Don's vocals. So
Yeah, you got the perfect like you said, the heaviness with the guitar and then the
yeah,
melodicness that
yeah,
Don brings to the
yeah,
songs
yeah,
too.
yeah.
So,
And they
but yeah,
weren't.
like Tooth and Nail, like that's a heavy album,
Oh
like
yeah,
and even a heavy song. Like that's one of their heaviest songs in their catalog.
yeah, and they weren't one of those bands who did a lot of ballads. They do. It was great. Do a couple of good ones, or whatever. But they didn't like load up their album with ballads or anything like that. So yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
was like that about them. So yeah,
Yep,
great
I
choice.
agree.
All right. So my third one. Again, there's probably going to possibly some issues as to whether they'd be happy about being included in the Hair Metal Hall of Fame. But I feel like I've got to at least nominate them, invite them, whether they accept or not. They're actually in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so I think there were some issues with that as well. But yeah, I'm talking about Guns N' Roses. So again, like Motley Crue, very influential. So when this came out, you saw a lot of bands also coming out with that quite a different look, right? It's sort of like it's like we talked about the subgenres of hair metal. It's that more sleazy side of hair metal, and but yeah, just that appetite for distractions probably hair metal's biggest hit, right? As far as an album is concerned, massive, still sounds good today. Like for me, it does anyway. I'm not sick of it, and there's obviously lots of songs that have been played on the radio and being played a lot, but it's start to finish a great album. Now, Use Your Illusion is a bit patchy, obviously, and then they haven't really been able to put out another album as the band we all know and love since then, really. There's the covers album, you wouldn't count that, and Chinese Democracy was pretty much an Axl solo album. So yeah, but so there's some issues there. But if you just look at what they achieved in the 80s, and there was the mini album Lions, which had some good songs on it. So, they were just massive, and, they can still tour and do very well with, not the original lineup, but, they've got Slash, obviously, they're in Duff there. So, yeah, I think for me, obviously they influenced a lot of the bands that came after them, and some of those bands would also maybe make the Hall of Fame if we were to include other bands. But I think they were the sort of the one of the original, not the originators perhaps, but one of the originators of that sort of sleazy hair metal. I mean, they're super influenced by, say, Hannibal Rocks. Hannibal Rocks. Maybe they should be in my Hall of Fame as well before I start. Maybe before GNR get in here, and they may even say that themselves. I don't know. Axl might just say, hey, we shouldn't be here if Hannibal Rocks aren't in here, because they're big influences, but, AC/DC as well. But then again, AC/DC is not really hair metal, is it? But I'm sure that they
Yeah.
influenced Guns N' Roses. So, yeah. So anyway, that's my third choice, Guns N'
Yeah,
Roses.
I agree. I can't complain. I can't say anything now. Granted, I don't listen to Guns N' Roses that much anymore either, but
Yeah,
can't deny though, like that they are like one of the originators of the sleaze metal genre that we will see in the coming years after
yeah.
1987 for the next 5 years,
That's
6 years,
right.
even all the way up until 1993. And
Yeah, yeah,
then
yeah.
like it's just like to me, like we say, they're one of the originators. Like I don't think they're the ones that totally made it. Like they're not like the only one that like, oh, we started this, because
No,
like
that's
you
right.
had Rock's Gang within like 6 months to 12
Yeah,
months of Appetite came out, Rock's Gang came out, and they are really sleazy too. LA Guns with the debut. Like there are other bands that were doing this early as well. So I don't think like they get the full Guns N' Roses doesn't get the full pass, but they certainly were the biggest
they were the big.
band that were sleazy, that helped project
Yeah,
that ahead.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
but yeah, I'm cool with that choice.
yeah. Cool. All right. So, what's your third nomination?
Oh, all right.
Sorry,
So
so
yeah,
fourth one.
fourth. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So I am gonna go with a band of mine that's really like I've grown to love more and more over the years. Now, this might be kind of more of a personal favorite than say an actual like I would seriously put in like a Hall of Fame, but they are the London Choir Boys from England. Now, to me, I don't know any other hair metal. Now, you can argue like, is the Choir Boys a hair metal band? I would say they're more along the lines of like a Faster Pussycat, sleazy style,
Yeah.
like not a dirty or not like a heavy sleaze, but like they're still dirty. They still have like that old rock and roll sound, like and drinking and having fun and partying. Like that is one of the staples of sleaze, just drinking all the time. So like
Yeah,
I don't know. And Spike, like this is another one that you're either gonna love me for picking the choir boys or you're gonna hate me because you're gonna be like, oh, they sound like hell. Like because you either love Spike's voice or you don't like Spike's voice and you can't listen to more than half the album. So I don't know. And I kind of like my Hall of Fame, like I would say comparison would be like an athlete that has like the storied career, kind of like a LeBron James in the NBA. Like he's like 40 plus years old now, and he's still in the league after 16 plus years. Like that's unheard of in past NBA or past professional sports, and then also in modern sports. Like you just don't hear about that. Same with like Tom Brady, even
mm,
like choir boys have that longevity, and they stayed true to their sound. Like whether that was cool or not, like the brand new choir boys album here that came out just like not even 6 months ago, still sounds like it easily sounds like their debut album, and it's just absolutely awesome. And I can't talk enough about Spike. I think he's one of the coolest, and like maybe not actual in he's not a Jim Gillette. Don't get like as far as talent goes, but like what he does very well. Like he portrays it very very well and
yeah,
such. Like it's just an awesome rock star. So that is going to be one of mine. And if you guys do check out the Choir Boys, obviously check out the debut album. That is the best. And especially if you like that Rod Stewart feel, like the
yeah,
Faces or like Rod Stewart's like first 3 or 4 albums in the 70s, like that is where we're at. But in an 80s hair metal feel, like I don't know how else to really explain the Choir Boys. Like Dogs D'Amour you had as well, but like obviously I think Choir Boys are better than Dogs, but Dogs are great, good dude too. But like I don't know, Steve, like any other bands from England, obviously Def Leppard, but like people throw them in a lot of different categories. So like as far as like this time period, like later 80s hair metal feel, like is there any other bands that you could kind of like push out from England? Like I know there are some others, like even like Thunder and such that are really good, but like any other like from
yeah.
England,
I
like
mean, around that time, of course, this is '91 when that Choir Boys album comes out. I think
90, yeah, yep,
90,
1990,
90 is it?
yeah,
Yeah,
1990, yep,
yeah. So yeah, and I think like I say, they they Dogs D'Amour, yeah, they were with them. I mean, Wild Hearts maybe a little bit. Wild Hearts, if you know
yeah,
about them, they're slightly different. I think you can definitely compare them to maybe some of the American bands. Like Junkyard reminds me a little
yeah.
bit of them.
Yeah,
Uh,
just an English version. Yeah, an English version of Junkyard. Just
yeah,
not with so much like southern bluesy
yeah,
feel.
that's
Not
right. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, there's a few obscure bands like Soho Roses, but I'm getting pretty obscure. So yeah, yeah. But no, I mean, interesting choice, and I like it because I think it's nice to have a variety. You got Nitro in there, and Nitro sound nothing like Choir Boys, but they still
right. Yeah.
in the early 1990s, you pick up a Kerrang magazine or even a Metal Hammer, and you'd have Nitro in there, but then you'd also have Choir Boys in there as well. So that was still lumped into that sort of rock and metal kind of world. So yeah,
Right. Yeah. And another thing, a reason why I chose it for like them for like the Hall of Fame is that because like they're coming from England, where like I said, there's not too many. Yes, there are like a handful. Like Jagged Edge UK is a really good English band as
yeah,
well, like in the hair metal category.
yeah,
But like there's no other band, and especially like still doing it kind of too at the same
yeah,
rate as the Choir Boys are too. So like I said, you have that longevity, and then you just have like this did go gold in the UK, which I mean I would imagine is like a pretty good milestone for a band, in the early 90s, late 80s. So like I don't know. I think they kind of like an underrated nomination, I would say, for the hair metal uh Hall of Fame.
yep.
So
No, I love it. I love it. I'm enjoying your picks because they're not a little bit different to mine, right? I've gone with some of the bigger bands, but I think a lot of your choices you can justify, and like I would also say, if I had more choices, then I'd be getting to some of those more obscure ones. But yeah, no, very good. All right, so yeah, mine's another big name. That was kind of how I went down with this. I thought maybe in future Hall of Fame inductions, I'd go with some of the smaller bands, but I'm just going to get the big ones out of the way first. So, and this one's an interesting one because, in theory, they only had a couple of albums, and some would argue even their second one maybe isn't even in the hair metal genre. But I'm going to go with Skid Row. So this is the big box set that came out last year, I think it was. But yeah, so their first album, I think, definitely fits the hair metal category.
Mm-hmm.
Big Guns, Can't Stand the Heartache, 18 Alive. I think they fit the hair metal category quite well. Youth Gone Wild is a classic anthem, for hair metal. They definitely got
Piece
heavier.
of me. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, piece of me,
Yeah,
even.
yeah,
Like
absolutely. I mean, they definitely got heavier, Slave to the Grind, and they went into it with Pantera. But I still think they were just more of a they just had got heavier. Really, I think they still had that. They're more the sleaze metal side, the heavier sort of sleaze metal sound,
mhm.
rather than the Bon Jovi sound which they had a little bit on that first album. But they were a much heavier sort of Bon Jovi sort of sound. But yeah, they were massive here in New Zealand. 18 in Life, when that took off, they became a massive band in the world. And I Remember You was also good. And it's Sebastian. Say what you want about him, he was a great front man, and yeah, great vocalist. And really, he was, had a great look, and so he was very much the poster boy for the band. And at the time, they would have been around their peak. They were one of the biggest bands in the world. They toured a lot with Guns N' Roses, and
Mhm.
Sebastian's actually quite good friends, I think, with Axel. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I think yeah. What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say I would throw Slay to the Grind into the hair metal category. I would still do that, like because like you said, like they just kind of moved from like not maybe like a glammy look, but like just like your traditional feel of hair metal on the first album, and then
Mm.
you have on Slave to the Grind or a step towards like the sleaze metal.
Mm.
But I mean, I consider it still under that hair metal category. So like I'm cool with you throwing that in the now
Yeah.
when you're talking about the next album, then we can start debating that. Then we're starting to say,
Yeah,
oh, is
I'm
this
debating that one.
Pantera?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I've got it, and it's in the box set here. To be honest with you, I've barely ever played that album. And maybe I've often said to myself, maybe I need to give it a bit more of a chance. But yeah, I mean the first two albums are classics, and of course their second album went straight to number one. Perhaps it wasn't as successful as the first one, and maybe as successful as what they might have wanted it to be. But and that at that time it's not 91 going on to 92. It's getting hard for those kind of bands, eh? So, um, but yeah, it's a bit of a shame. Their legacy is a bit of a shame too, with what's happened with Sebastian, and they've gone through so many lead vocalists since then. But yeah.
All right. I was gonna say too, like obviously, like you said, the year 1991 doesn't help the album sales like stay on top of number one. But I think also too, they went on tour that year with Pantera,
Mm.
which is kind of like to like an actual like to like a avid metal fan, they're
Mm.
not gonna like it. To like the girls that like Skid Row
Yeah.
aren't gonna like that, So like it was like a weird bill, like people
Mm.
that go to see Pantera don't probably don't care about Skid Row, to be
Mm.
honest with you. And the same people that care about Skid Row are like, who what the hell is this? Pantera stuff, Like I
Yeah,
think that was kind of a bad, thing
yeah,
for
maybe.
the sales of albums too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I tell you what, if we did have a proper induction, the induction would be interesting. Eh? Like, is Sebastian going to turn up? Is the band going to be able to like be on the same stage with them? Do one
yeah.
song? Can you guys just do one song together, please? Uh,
Yeah. That would probably sell pretty well, I would
it would
imagine.
sell. It would sell, but I don't even know if the band would be into it because obviously, I think Sebastian's up for it. He'd be like, "Yeah, I'll go back," but the band are like, "No, we don't want to have anything to do with you. You're just not worth the hassle."
Yeah, they're terribly done, it seems
Yeah,
like, with that.
yeah,
With
yeah. Because I mean, with the situation they're in right now, right? Like, if there was ever a time, like, well, we've gone through five singers or however many it's been, maybe we should get, and they're still not going to do it. So,
right.
yeah,
And that would be like a classic swan song too, like for a band. Like just do like 1 week of shows and as the
yeah,
like the actual original lineup, and then call it quits for everybody. Pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah.
So, all
All
right,
right,
yeah, but I'm cool. Yeah, I'm cool with Skid Row. That's all right. That's a good deal.
Yeah, and to be fair to Sebastian, he's put out a new album. It's a pretty good album. I quite like it. So he's still putting out good stuff.
Yeah,
He,
yeah.
he doesn't need Skid
I
Row.
remember when Angel Down came
Yeah,
out in like 2006, 2008,
mm,
around that time. Not a bad album, it's pretty good.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm with you. So I will give my number one here now, Steve, I guess, right?
yeah, yeah. Your last
Okay.
one, yeah,
Yep, yep. All right. So this is, like I said, I talked earlier about when we talked about Poison, Cinderella, Britney Fox, and Poison were. I wasn't even alive yet, and I knew who these bands were. So, and I'm gonna go with Cinderella, as I can see that this album behind you, in your collection there as
yes, yes,
well. So,
yeah, yeah.
so yes, very cool. But Cinderella, what can't you say about Cinderella? This is like another one, like as when I said with the Dokken, like I don't know anyone who doesn't like Cinderella.
Mm,
Like even people that don't really care for this type of
mm,
metal or just this type of music in general, like they're like they hear some Cinderella songs and they're like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like I like this song, I like this ballad or whatever. The deal is. Don't know what you got till it's gone. It's still being played everywhere. Like even like in Walmart the other day, I heard it being played on their radio. It's like that's absolutely crazy. I was kind
yeah,
of dumbfounded, with that, but nonetheless, very rightfully deserved in my opinion.
yeah, yeah,
But
totally.
yes, Cinderella, they're like awesome stuff. Like another comparison to Dawkins too. Like they only had 4 albums. Like you could say they kind of were cut short because after Heartbreak Station, Tom had his vocal issues, and they missed the chance of a 1992 output. And then they in 1994 they did release Still Climbing, which is still a very good album for the time. But if they would have been able to possibly put out an album in 1992 and that even go gold or platinum, they might have even been able to be on the stadium tour as well recently, and that, but I don't know. I just think it's hard to find someone that doesn't like Cinderella. That's my biggest thing. And they are just one of the biggest bands of the 80s. They sold millions of albums, tens of millions of albums. And it's just, I don't know. This, out of all seriousness though, like this band and Dawkins would be like, if I actually had, if this was like a legit thing that we're like going to start here, like theirs would be like on the top tier of the
Sure.
list for me. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
like this is totally like no one can argue these two
yeah,
bands,
yeah, yeah,
Dawkins and Cinderella. So,
yeah.
and it's just a shame that we didn't get another Cinderella album. Obviously now Jeff passed
Mm,
sadly a couple years back, and Tom's just kind of like doing his own thing. Eric Brittenham, he retired pretty much
mm,
now from all music, and Fred's doing like production, like other stuff now. So it's just a shame we just can't get another Cinderella album. But I
mm,
mean, the 4 that we have is plenty to be
mm,
happy with.
yeah.
No doubt, no doubt. So that's my number one pick, though. Steve is Cinderella, and I think I hope everyone agrees with that
Oh
one.
yeah, no, they're top tier band, aren't they? So I mean, yeah, absolutely. They're not in mine, but they would be probably very close to having made it. Because yeah, I mean, and the thing, what I like about Cinderella is, yeah, you can play that now and it doesn't sound dated. It still sounds it's good hard rock, and
Yeah,
some of the hair metal stuff that I like, maybe does sounds a bit cheesy now, but maybe doesn't age that well. But Cinderella is
right.
timeless. It's timeless music. So, yeah, and I wasn't that keen on when they got just a little bit too bluesy on Heartbreak Stations. Like, oh, you're getting, because I like hair metal. I like the metal aspect of it too. And it's starting to get a bit more in the sort of rock or the blues rock kind of
Yeah,
genre, and so he started to lose me a little bit there. Still climbing, I think they got back to that sound a little bit more. There was a bit more of a compromise there, I felt.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but those first
100%.
the killer. And
Because sorry, I was gonna say with the Heartbreak
yeah,
Station,
yeah,
definitely with like, hey, I think that's what did turn a lot of people off because that only went one time platinum,
yeah,
and at the time Cinderella was big business, and just when they produced that, it was like, it kind of felt like their fifth album, but it's only their third album. Like they grown so much after 2 albums, they just jumped after their second album to their fifth album, and
sure,
everyone was like, oh my gosh, what's this, so
yeah, yeah,
but yeah, that was my point for Heartbreak
Yeah,
Station.
no, that is a good point. It's almost like Still Climbing should have been album number 3, and maybe Heartbreak should have been the 4th one. It's sort of like, okay, you can see the progression, but yeah, they just sort of led to that, and it was a bit like I remember buying it back in the day and being really disappointed, and I was disappointed when I heard saw the music video, because I think that was my first time I heard some new music from. I saw the music video, and I was like,
Shelter
oh,
Me, I guess.
I think
Was
it
it
was
Shelter
Shelter
Me?
Me. Yeah, it was
Okay.
Shelter Me. Yeah, it's like, that's not exactly Shake Me, and so yeah, I was a bit disappointed, but yeah, I mean the first 2 albums, and that first album, the album covers like talking about posters for hair metal, right? That's a classic hair metal look there. Yeah.
Yep.
Even though it's probably slightly false advertising because they look like Poison but didn't sound like them at all, So quite heavy. That first album's quite heavy.
Yes, sir. It is, and that is one of the biggest like fake outs of the
Yeah,
80s,
yeah,
or just even of the last 50 years. Like, oh
yeah,
yeah, this band looks even worse than Poison.
yeah,
Even more
yeah,
girly than Poison.
yeah,
And you turn
yeah,
it on, you're like, holy shit! Like this is
yeah.
awesome.
Night Songs kicks off or Shake Me with that riff, and then Tom with his
Yeah.
vocals, shredding vocals. Yeah, nice, great band. All right, so my final nomination is another big band, and interesting. This band where I am here in New Zealand wasn't actually that massive, and like I talked about, oh, you walk down the street and you ask someone, do you know Poison, Skid Row? People here in New Zealand would probably say yes, but I don't know if they would with this band. But they were a major band, and a little bit like Motley Crue, quite influential. So I've gone with the Rat. This is my favorite Rat album, Invasion of
Okay.
Their Privacy. Just because they had a number of albums that all went platinum. That like Dokken, they just couldn't get along in the end and broke up.
Mhm.
Arguably, you'd say when they broke up, the genre, their type of sound wasn't, was probably dying out a little bit anyway. Maybe it was good for them to take a break. But yeah, they had a good run of success, and they'd been around. Like their EP, I think, came out in '83, I think, something like that.
Yeah,
So
83.
and they'd been around prior to that. If you listen to interviews, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, listen to interviews by Stephen Pearcy. He'd been in LA playing in bands, since '70s, sort of thing. So it was a band that really just, and they'd had some big names in the band too before they sort of got their classic lineup. Other people had been in and out of the band. I think George Lynch and Jakey Lee, and even played in the band for a little bit when there was Mickey Rat and things like that. So, yeah, but yeah, great band. Like I say, this is my favorite Rat album. It's actually one of my favorite albums of all time. It's my number one album from 1985. So, yeah, really love the band. I don't like their other albums quite as much, but still really good. And I think they'd be one of the biggest hair metal bands of all time. So, got to put them in there.
I could dig that because they're somewhat early as well.
Yeah,
Like you said, 83, and they had
yeah,
that look. Like they're right there around with Motley Crue, like trying to do like very similar style music.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're one of the ones as well that get lumped in. I think that should probably get lumped in a little more. Because all you hear is round and round, and they're way more than just round and round.
Yeah.
Because like I remember a couple of years ago, someone was saying the best one hit wonders, and someone put Rat in there, and I'm like, what are you talking about? They had multiple platinum albums, to your point, and then also they had plenty of singles that
Mm,
charted,
mm,
throughout the 80s and into Detonator into
mm.
1990. Like I don't know, I don't get that. But to your point there with that album, even Rat has, especially on Invasion of Your Privacy, that guitar tone. Like,
Yeah,
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 we're going back to the guitar tone. It seems to
yeah.
be very important in the hair metal genre here. And then also like Lay It Down has
Mm,
to be a top 10
mm,
riff,
mm,
top 10 riff and just song in
mm.
metal, or none in any subgenre of metal. Like just top 10 of all time. Like I think it's pretty that strong. Like even though it does get played out, I would say it does get overplayed
Mm.
in context to the rest of the Rat catalog. But it's still like when it comes on, you're like, when you first hear that riff, you're like, everyone needs to get the fuck out the way because I need to hear this riff. Like it's serious stuff. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
but
It's
yeah, great
amazing.
choice though. Great choice.
Yeah, cool, awesome. All right, well that's it. So that's our five selections for the Hall of Fame. Obviously, we could go on. We could probably talk about this all day, right? With different bands that could potentially be in our Hall of Fame. Is there any other sort of things that bands you want to mention, Trevor, or maybe
Yeah,
inspiration or anything like that?
I was listening to a couple other bands today, and like I have a soft spot for Warrant. I think Janie
Oh,
Lane's
yeah.
one of the best songwriters of the era. And I kind of throw in like uh Warrant with Firehouse. They're very similar in my opinion. Like great vocalist, just great songwriting in general. Like those first two albums of Firehouse are just absolutely amazing, and for Warrant, the first three albums. But like I don't know, like those are some good that I think kind of get under or overlooked as well. You could even honestly like throw in like Winger too. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like Winger a lot, but like they're not my favorite. But like just on the sheer talent, like on the for the Nitro angle, just on the sheer talent of the band, like you you're not gonna find a more talented band than Winger,
That's a good
So
point. Yeah, it's a really good
so
point. Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's a couple ones that kind of went
Yeah.
through my head today in preparation for this video as well as these bands here. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, great, awesome. Yeah, no, totally. Great having you on the show, Trevor. So there we go. That's our five that we've selected each for the Hair Metal Hall of Fame. Let us know in the comments. Who would make your five if you were going to set up a Hall of Fame? Who would make your five in the Hair Metal Hall of Fame? Now, just before we go, I also want to mention that obviously there's I think some bands that would be that I consider anyway inspirations, right? So Aerosmith, I think Kiss. I talked about Hannah Rocks before, Van Halen, Led Zeppelin. They could be in like the inspirations, inspiring bands, or the bands that got these bands to sort of start playing music. So I think you'd probably have to recognize them in some ways as well. But there we go. So hey, don't forget to check out Trevor's channel if you haven't before. I'm sure you probably have if you're watching my channel. But Krash Kourse Metal Show, fantastic show. Does lots of reactions and reviews and all sorts of great stuff. And I think you got a great guest coming up very soon, haven't you, on your show?
yeah, yeah, certainly. I'm sure a lot of people that are watching this are going to be familiar with the next guest that's coming on my show here in the next week. So definitely stay tuned for that, guys. So
Yeah, nice one. Yeah. All right, cool. Thanks for watching. Make sure you, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and we'll catch you later. All right. See ya.